In this video, I'm going to show you how to create new game objects or instantiate game objects while your game is running. So let's say that I have my player object here, and every time they jump, I want it to spawn a particle effect under their feet, right? So right now it just sort of bounces when I hit space. The first thing I need to do is I need to create the particle effect. So I'm going to go ahead and create a particle system that just looks like that. Very simple. I'm not even going to bother modifying it just because for all intents and purposes, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. I'm going to rename this object to jump effect, and then I'm going to turn it into a prefab by pulling it down here into my assets or into my project group, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Now what I want to happen is every time I hit space, I want it to spawn one of those jump effects at my feet, so it plays the particle effect, right? So let's take a look at how I do this. In my player's script graph that's set up, right, in the visual scripting language, I have this logic already set up. So when I press the button down, it checks if I should jump. If it does, it adds force. It's also keeping track of how many times I've jumped. Once it's done that, the next thing I want to do is I want it to call Unity's instantiate method. Instantiate looks like this: game object instantiate, and there's a bunch of different versions of this unit or of this node. I'm going to use the one that takes an original, like the original object to instantiate, as well as a position and a rotation. Looks like this. Okay, let's look at the parameters for this thing. So I want this to happen after I update my jump count. The original here is looking for what game object should this spawn. Well, there's a couple ways I can do this. I can just hit this bullseye, and you can see I can select any of the objects that are actually in my Unity project. And check it out. My jump effect prefab is listed here. So I can hook up my jump effect prefab. I could also hook this up as an object variable for my jump effect prefab, but this works for what I need it to do. I don't want this to spawn at position 0, 0, 0. What I actually want to do is spawn at my feet. So I'm going to look and see if I can do a get position. Let's see if there is even one that says, yeah, transform.get position. Get position gets my current position. So that's good enough. Let's do that. Let's put it right at my position. Now it's going to spawn it in the center of my player object, which isn't really what I'd want. So I'd probably actually want to take this position and then add to it a vector that pushes it down a little bit so it's closer to my feet. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to spawn it right in the center. So I'm using instantiate. It's going to instantiate the jump effect. It's going to put it in this position. Great. Let's go hit play and see what this does. Cool. I am getting a missing input value for rotation. Let's go back here and take a look what that means. Gotcha. So my rotation right now is currently hooked up to nothing. Rotation actually takes something called a quaternion, which is essentially just like a fancy way to store rotations or in 3D space. So what I'm actually looking for here is a quaternion identity. Now the quaternion identity, which is this get identity, is essentially the same thing as saying 0, 0, 0, right? Spawn this with no rotation at all. Let's go try running this again. Let's see if that fixes it. Great. Now when I hit space, it's spawning the particle effect, and it's spawning it right in the center of my object. Okay, looks pretty good. Although I know it's spawning a whole lot of them, and I want them to go away after a second. Notice all my jump effects are sort of stacking up here, right? They never go away. So let's make them go away. I'm going to go my jump effect prefab, scroll down here to the very bottom, add component. I'm going to go to visual scripting, script machine. I'm going to create a brand new script machine, it's a new graph, and I'm going to call it jump effect. In my jump effect graph, I only want to do one thing. I want it to do game object destroy. There's a version of game object destroy that takes an object as well as t for time. So in the start function for this, or in the start event, I only want this to happen once as soon as the game object is sort of instantiated, as soon as it's spawned. I'm going to have it execute this game object destroy. Which object should I execute? Well, I want it to grab this game object. Let's see if I can find a Let's see, does this do it? Sure. Okay, so this represents the current game object that this script is running on. So it's going to destroy this object, and then it's looking for when. Let's give it 3 seconds, 3.0, and I'll hit enter there. And there's nothing else I want the script to do, just destroy this object after 3 seconds. Let's go try this. Now when I hit play, I hit space, spawns the jump effect, and after 3 seconds, hopefully fingers crossed, there it is, goes away. Now, you know, if you were building an actual game, this jump effect would probably be really quick, so it'd probably be less than a second or something like that. You'd line up to your feet, you'd make it look really nice, and that's how you'd create the jump effect. You could probably hook up the same ones for when you're landing on the ground, hooked up to like collision enter or some of those other events. And that's how we hook up these different events for various things inside of our games.